Call Lamar City Council regular meeting to order Tuesday, January 17th at 12 p.m. We have roll call, Ben.
Nelson?
Yes.
Knapp?
Yes.
Hartswinkle? Goodchild?
Yes.
Burton?
Yes.
Would you please stand and say pledge allegiance with me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Motion been made and second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'd like to welcome people in the chamber today at our council meeting, and Bennett from the Lamar's Daily Sentinel, especially you people that are watching over television, wherever you may be. First thing on the agenda is our general discussion, and we ask you to stand up to the podium, state your name and address, and if you've got any concerns or anything good to say about the city, why you might want to share that with us. The council members can't make any decision under general discussion today, but they're always certainly willing to listen and add to the concerns. Do we have any today? Okay. If not, I'd like to introduce a lady here that is just became our new library director. Her name is Shirley Taylor. Shirley, would you like to share with us?
Hi, thank you for the welcome, and I'm excited to be the director here at Lamar's Public Library. It started June 9th, and that is also the first day of summer reading. So we have been very busy, which is a sign of a healthy library. We have lots of kids coming and going, checking out books, and the staff has been great. So things are busy, but that's very, very healthy for a public library in the summer.
Well, good. Welcome to Lamar's, and welcome to the new job, and we're looking forward to working with you.
Great, thank you.
You bet. Okay, thumbs up award.
Nothing today, sir.
How about you, Delana?
Thumbs up to all of the city departments that were out working during the night,
All night,
trying to deal with potential emergency situations, storms, water overflowing, trees down, all of that. So thumbs up to everybody for pulling together and getting the job done in the middle of the night.
You're right. Rex?
Pass.
Ken?
Well, thank the forefathers for not building on the river. Had sense enough to build up around the railroad tracks, stay a little high, so.
I too would like to expand a little bit on what Donna just said here. You people should know that we need to pass on that we have a very excellent program in line, and hopefully we'll never have to use it. But if there's a disaster comes through Lamar's, we have practiced it, we work with it, and everybody knows what to do. And rest assured they will be out doing it. But I wanted you to know that hopefully we never have anything like happened to Pilgrim, Nebraska last night. But in the event it does, we do have a program in line, and certainly we'll put it in force if it ever happens. Okay, moving on to consent items. All items listed on the consent agenda will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items unless a request is made prior to the time the council votes on the motion. Today we have 9 of them. Approval of the June 3rd, 2014 regular meeting minutes. Number 2 is a list of the bills for the period ending 6/13/14. Number 3 is a monthly financial statement for May 2014. Number 4 is a renewal of liquor license at Archie's and Rick Bach. Number 5 is appointments. And I might add, on the appointments, I have visited with every one of the people that's accepted on these appointments of the different committees. Number 6 is a resolution granting cigarette permits. Number 7 is a street closure, Tour de Plymouth. And number 8 is the ambulance fee schedule. And number 9 is interfund transfer resolution. Is there any one of the 9 that you'd like to visit about before we...
I'd like to make a comment on number 6 if I could.
Okay?
Every year at this time, I mention this resolution that comes up for permits. as odd as this whole system might be, we are asked to put our signatures on a permit that allows people to smoke cigarettes or chew tobacco, and we know how many thousands of deaths there are per year caused by the tobacco. I'm just curious, and nobody here probably has the answer. I just wonder if our governor has put his signature on it, and why they asked the city officials to put their signature on something that so many people are wholly against. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other that anybody has? Not, I'd entertain a motion.
Approve consent items 1 through 9.
Second.
Motion made and second to approve the consent items 1 through 9. Could we have a roll call on that, Beth?
Turkey,
Yes.
Knapp,
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes.
Goodchild.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to the action items, which is our airport. The first one is the airport master plan. On May 30th, 2014, Bolton and Mink Incorporated finished the airport master plan and submitted it to the Master Plan Advisory Group for their review and comment. No additional comments have been received. The MPAG's last meeting was held May 19th, 2014, at which time the final draft was thoroughly discussed and commented on. City of Lamar's wishes to thank the Master Plan Advisory Group members for their time and input and guidance on the master plan. It's now time for the full council to review and approval of the airport master plan. Bolton and Mink has furnished additional copies of the plan for each council member. It's attached under a separate cover, and Bolton and Mink is present at the meeting. Matt and I'm sorry? Melissa, yeah. Would you want to share with us where we're at on it, Matt?
Sure. You've all got copies of the final master plan and the airport layout plan that we've been working on for approximately 18 months. We believe we're at a point where we're ready to turn this final draft into the FAA for their final review and comment. At this point, we brought Melissa along. Melissa was the lead planner. Melissa wants to walk through the process with you and explain how we developed the document, what's included in the document, and answer any questions that council may have prior to a recommendation of submittal to the FAA.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I just kind of want to go over this big book that was sent out to everybody so you can kind of have an understanding of what's been going on for the last 12 months. An airport master plan is a document required by the FAA that gives a 20-year outlook at the airport. It takes a look at what's out there today, then it submits user surveys to get an idea of who's using the airport now and who plans to use it in the future. We forecast the base aircraft there and the number of operations in and out of the airport, and then we provide recommendations for future development to meet the needs of those users. And that's basically what's in this document. It covers an inventory, is Chapter 2 there, an inventory of what's at the airport today. Chapter 3 is the forecast that shows the type of growth we can expect over the next 20 years and plan for. And the facility requirements is kind of the bulk of the document. It talks about how we're going to meet the needs of those existing users there today, and then also over the 20-year plan. And as the Mayor mentioned, there was a master plan advisory group pulled together to work on this document, guide us through, get us to understand who really uses the airport and what their needs are in the future. Out of this document, the FAA approves the forecast section. They're saying they agree with the growth projected at the airport, and that's that Chapter 3 here. And the FAA did approve that chapter for Lamar's in January. So based on that, the next step that the FAA will want to approve is the airport layout plan, which you all received today, which is a graphic representation of what's in the master plan. So this is what the FAA will dive into and look at as the recommended future plans for the airport. I can just walk you through each sheet really quickly just so you have an understanding of what's on there. Sheet 1 is the title sheet. Shows the wind coverage at the airport, the location of the airport, just the general information about the facility. Sheet 2 is kind of the major sheet of the plan. It's the airport layout plan sheet, and it documents the existing safety areas around the airport, the future conditions, and the ultimate conditions of the 20-year plan and any expansion that's seen. So what was developed based on the Master Plan Advisory Group meetings that we had and based on the forecast, we're showing a 150-foot extension to the north. Within the near future, we're saying that the users would need that to gain extra takeoff length for the airport, and also a parallel taxiway for them to use as safety so they're not taxiing on the runway. That's recommended for the near future, and the FAA has supported that. What we're showing in the ultimate development is based on the corporate users at the airport, the jet traffic that's coming in, even more runway length is necessary for their safe operations. So we're showing an ultimate extension with a displaced threshold, meaning they'll have over 5,000 feet to calculate for their takeoff length at the airport. That's very critical for the corporate users there, and then what's been coming to the airport recently. Also on this plan, we're showing building area development, development to the north side of the building area for smaller aircraft, agricultural sprayers, those type of users, and development to the south for corporate users and jet traffic. With the runway extension, there is some property acquisition shown to the north of the airport, and this sheet shows all the safety areas and that you meet those standards for people flying into the airport. The third sheet is showing the airspace around the airport based on the type of approaches at the airport and based on the runway extension. These are the FAA approach surfaces and airspace studies that are around the airport. Sheets 4 and 5 are a zoomed-in look at the ends of the runways. So sheet 4 shows the north end where the runway extensions would occur. The blue pavement is all future development with the runway extension and the construction of the parallel taxiway. Orange is ultimate. We see that further down the line. And then the obstructions based on those developments. There's some tree obstructions to the airspace that would need to be addressed at the time of those extensions. Sheet 5 shows the south end of the runway. Due to the location of the railroad, the highway, the trail, this end cannot be extended because it would cause penetrations to those surfaces, and we don't plan to ever move a railroad or a roadway. You all know the expense and with that type of a project. So this end will stay as it exists today. Sheet 6 is a zoomed-in layout of the building area expansion. As I mentioned before, the north is kind of the smaller aircraft, egg sprayers, ones with smaller wingspans, where the south is more developed for commercial users, jet traffic, and those type. Sheet 7 of the plan shows the land use around the airport and the potential zoning that you're working on, land use zoning around the airport. So this follows kind of the city-county comp plan and how that impacts the airport. And that's currently being updated within the county, the airport zoning around the airport. And the final sheet is the property map. It shows what the airport owns today and then the future acquisition that would be needed for the future projects on the airport. So I know that's a really, really quick rundown of what's on this airport layout plan. So I would entertain any questions that you have, but it's been great working on this master plan process with the city and the master plan advisory group. The FAA is supportive of what we've been doing moving forward. So now it's time to just show them everything that we've pulled together to get their final approval on this plan.
As we move further north with this and widen the clear area, will we have to pay mitigation for tree removal from the river areas? Is that going to be a factor?
There's already been a lot of mitigation done, so that as the runway exists today, there wouldn't be any additional tree removal needed, but as you do move north, there would be some more tree mitigation that would be needed.
And what, you think we'll get stuck with mitigation, Scott?
There may be some wetland mitigation that would be evaluated.
Okay. At least we won't be surprised this time.
Isn't that Cincinnati or someplace like that, there we put it by
Yeah, I think
a park in Cincinnati or somewhere, didn't we do that last time? Somewhere. It wasn't here.
The land around the airport, Scott, you know, those lots that we've got on the, right next to the highway, are those, can we move those now? Can we sell those, or,
We would want this plan approved first,
okay?
and as Melissa had indicated when we did our final review in the committee level, the lots that do front onto Business 75 are not needed for airport purposes.
Right, so this will help the FAA see that over the next 20 years, we don't see those parcels necessary for the airport growth.
Okay.
So they would be free to go through the land release process with the FAA and be used for other development within the city, if
And the
desired.
state would approve that also?
Based on approval of this airport layout plan, yes.
Okay.
Now, Melissa, on the third page with the airport approach and the oval around the runway and everything.
Yeah.
I had thought that with the approval for the new water tower that we're building, that we had discussed, or FAA had required a west-only approach. And this looks like it's pretty much a full circle. So I'm just wondering where that west-only approach comes in.
That's in the procedures to access the runway ends. There's not a special airspace kind of path for that approach, but they do have that in place. This is just showing the protection to fly into those ends, but that's still into consideration. They have that in their approach procedures.
Okay,
So it's kind of two
somewhere in all
separate.
of I mean, I didn't read this verbatim. Somewhere in here, it's indicating that we will be requiring a west-only.
It's already active.
Okay.
Yeah.
The airspace you're seeing in here is still a requirement of every airport. It does not, the approach patterns into the airport are not reflected necessarily in the protected airspace of the airport. The intention of these conical surfaces is to protect pilots all the way around the airport, should someone be coming in from something that may not be a runway end.
Okay. And then, since we're doing a 20-year plan, should the prospective water tower be indicated on here? If we're presenting this as a 20-year plan and we know that that's already in the works as of the time of this document?
Yeah, it would need to be called out because it's already been addressed on what the impact that it will have to the airport, so it doesn't need to be specifically called out to still move forward. Just as it was to be a proposed project, then we would want to call it out, but since it's underway and everyone's on board with it, we wouldn't have to specifically call it out in this plan. It doesn't hinder it from happening.
Okay. So you have faith that the FAA won't come back and say, but wait, you didn't tell us?
We actually did work with the FAA through this process, as well as the engineers who were doing the water tower and Mr. Lango on making sure that penetrations were not exceeding safety regulations for the airport.
And somebody's signature, or preferably more than one somebody's signatures, are
Yes,
on
those-
the dotted line?
yes, those were already turned in.
Okay.
Did I sign that?
No, the,
I want about 4 signatures in the
we
FAA.
want FAA signatures. Yeah, see,
Is the water
we're,
tower the only question on the east approach, or is there some trees in the issue across the highway there? Or is the water tower the only reason that they've gone to a west approach only?
The water tower was the driver for changing the pattern.
So that has nothing to do with any trees or anything like that?
because I think we're still, Wells' South Ice Cream Plant's still too high too. I think there's a lot of things that
Out
we're,
there
that we're
okay.
over it already,
Okay.
right? When we started looking at.
On your projection for usage, future usage, just to educate myself, what is an annual operation?
That's, what those count is how many times an airplane lands at the airport and takes off.
Okay.
So every time an airport lands is one operation, every time an airplane takes off is one operation. So we're trying to guess how many happen at 1 year at a time.
Okay, okay. I was just kind of curious what you base your projections on.
It's a lot
Just
of,
the increases you've seen over the past, is that basically the?
yeah, we look at what the FAA predicts as a nation, what they predict as a state, and make some estimations off of that. It goes off kind of the base aircraft at your airport, help drive the type of number of operations that occur at the airport. So it's gathering all that data that we do know, since there's not an air traffic control tower here, and making those estimates based on what the FAA has seen over, the past.
Then
Yeah, and then the user survey too, that data went into that as well.
then kind of a follow-up question with Kenny's down there. Is there any future concern about size of aircraft or needed runway or whatever that the river's going to start playing a factor into our needs or hinder us
There-
down the road? I know we can't see forever, but we're looking at 20-year plans, so is the river going to come into play?
Well, the river is kind of a physical boundary that you work around at the airport at this time. Right now, the current users would prefer to have more length, just to have more fuel on their aircraft, more passengers, but they're utilizing what they have right now based on those constraints of the river and everything. And the plan that we've developed addresses that constraint and gets them the maximum takeoff length that we can on this site without relocating the river. So our goal was to maximize what we have today. And we see that that would fit the user's needs over the next, 15, 20 years from what we can tell.
Have you taken a snapshot of if we ever had to relocate the river, is it a possibility? I mean, is it in the?
Yeah, we looked at those alternatives, but we talked to them with the FAA, and, that's not something that they want to go down based on, the environmental.
Environmental impact,
Right.
absolutely.
Right, but it is something we looked at. It's something we could always add to the plan if that type of development starts to occur at the airport, that you see that length and that type of moving the river, whatever the case may be, comes up to fruition. We
Right.
can always look at that. But at this point, with the users that we saw today and into the near future, we feel we can maximize the existing site to address their needs.
I know we've got more jets coming in than we have had in the past, it appears anyway. Insurance is a big factor, as I understand it, for these companies. With, if we can extend that out, another 450 feet you were talking about?
Right.
Is that going to satisfy the insurance people and
That will make a big difference because it will get you to that 5,000 feet for their takeoff calculations, and that's one of the critical numbers that these jet aircraft and insurance companies have to use the runway. So that will satisfy a lot of the users to get that magic
to
number.
get to the 5,000 mark?
Correct,
Which we're going to have to go another 450 feet, is that it?
correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Matt or Michelle?
I
If not-
compliment them on the report.
It's a very good report.
Very thorough
It really is. Very detailed, and you folks worked hard on this, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Enjoyed working with you.
Okay, moving on to the action item number 2.
We got
We
it.
better take care
Oh, I
of this.
better
A
take care of it.
modification to the motion should be that your motion to approve submitting this plan as presented.
Motion approving to submit the airport master plan as presented by Bolton and Mink, Inc., and as recommended by the Master Plan Advisory Group.
Second.
Motion been made and approved, submitting the airport master plan as presented by Bolton and Mink, and as recommended by the Master Plan Advisory Group. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Oh, excuse me.
Then just real quickly, once it's submitted, it might take, Matt had indicated to me earlier that it might take a month to a month and a half for FAA to put their final blessing on it. Once that occurs, there may or may not be any final comments. If there are, those will be incorporated. So it'll probably be, we're sitting mid-June. It could be that first council meeting in August, that this document will come back before you with the concurrence of FAA to finally approve the document itself.
Okay.
So does that go to this MPEG group? This is a new acronym. I just thought I should throw that out.
No, we thanked them and we sent them on their way
Okay.
because
We've
the
been-
rest
we've
has to
done
be
that
taken
already,
care of
Rex.
by the
We've
council.
never had MPEG before. 20 years. Of course, we thought at the time 3,000-foot runway was okay when I started, when you started there. We went to 4,000, we thought that was plenty. Then 4,000 was not 4,000, we had to go a little farther to make 4,000, 4,000, and now we're gonna go to 5, right? That's really what's happened in 20 years, right? Right, Earl?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I was just wanting to make sure that everybody's aware. We haven't neglected on the way, but that's been the prognosis, was we thought 3 was enough, then we thought 4 was enough, with 4 being 000 behind it, and that wasn't enough, so then it had to go over 4,000 to be 4,000 acceptable, and now we're gonna go to 5.
Is aircraft changing, or is regulations mainly the change, the culprit? Just out of curiosity, Earl.
Well, the regulations are changing. The corporate aircraft are getting more efficient and more accessible to more corporations, and more corporations are purchasing these jet aircraft. But the insurance company, just like the FAA, just keeps upping the limit all the time.
Better brakes is never an option.
Better brakes and thrust reversers. But you don't get to count thrust reversers, you only can use brakes.
Okay.
I can tell you this, there's some pretty fancy jets landing in our airport right now.
Yes, we've had a lot of aircraft that landed here that actually have businesses in Sioux Center and Orange City. So they've been utilizing our airport because we do have 4,600 feet.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Earl. Anything else, Scott, on that? Okay. Moving on to action items, number 2, Business 75. Attached is a poll result of 2 intersections along Business 75. One is at 18th Street and the other at 24th Street. Also attached are the last 4 years' summary of accidents along Business 75 furnished by the Lamar's Police Department. Purpose of the agenda item is to discuss this issue. Staff is requesting council's comments and criteria. City engineer proposes to review the Business 75 route from Iowa 3 to west to 200th Street and Key Avenue. A section of the route with recommended changes and improvements will be brought back to the council in 1 month or else on July 15th. We've had some real serious problems here, particularly recently again, on that intersection of 18th Street and 24th Street. And I think Scott did a remarkable job here of putting out your opinions in your polls and recapping them and as to what we can do about it. As I understand it, when you turn off of that interstate or bypass, the speed limit is 55. However, I don't know where that figure come from because I drove it this morning and I thought I was wrong. I don't see a sign that says 55 out there.
I watch for those, because I also watch for Stu.
Is there a sign?
We're southbound, not coming into town.
Oh, okay, I was coming in. Okay. But there is a sign at
If you're
40.
leaving town, it says the speed limit, but if you get off the bypass ramp coming north, there is no sign.
Okay, that's what I took. I
Right
was
where the
coming
bridge
back in.
is, there's no sign all the way into town.
Anyway,
Part of the reason for that is the extension of 200, that's a county system, that's a farm-to-market gravel,
Oh, sure.
and that's
What it is.
That's what it is. Okay, thanks. Anyway, it's time to discuss this and opinions or ideas or thoughts, and like you say, we'll take every one of them into consideration and bring them back a month from now, see what we want to do about it.
I just thought it was interesting looking at the 3.5 years of accident reports that we were given. I know we're looking at 18th and 24th, probably because there's larger vehicles involved, but actually 6th, 12th, and Highway 3 all had more accidents during that same time period than either of the 2 intersections that we're discussing.
You're right.
And 6th, because it's a screwy 5-way intersection, and it is what it is, and I think we just need to keep the markings very clear on the road. 12th, I've never liked the way that is kind of a free-for-all as far as who's turning and who's going straight and which lane, and I still think we need something posted up above and turn signals. Something needs to be done there on the east-west, and I think that's where the confusion is coming in there. But all 3 of those had more accidents than the 12th, or than the 18th or 24th.
They did, and most of the severe accidents occur on 18th and 24th simply because of the speed. And that's, because if you look at either one of these intersections, they're wide open. You can see, you've got really good visibility. So speed is the biggest factor there. I thought I'd bring this up. I talked to the chief of police in Sioux Center this morning, and my question to him was, what's happened to their accident rate on Highway 75 through the city of Sioux Center since they reduced from 4 lanes to 3 with a center turn lane? And he said that they investigate very few accidents during a year's time in the entire stretch within the city limits. I don't know what the mileage is from north to south, but if you're familiar with Sioux Center, it's quite a ways. He said changing it from 4 lanes to 3 has really almost eliminated accidents along that stretch of highway. And he said it's a pro and a con both. He said the 3 lanes really reduces the speed. So if you want to get somewhere, people are now using side streets.
They're going on the side street, they're going to the residential.
Yeah, because Highway 75 is not it doesn't move traffic as efficiently as it used to. It slows traffic down, but he said it is much safer. So I just thought I'd throw those comments out. I wanted to know what he had to say about that.
Side streets wouldn't be an issue here, though. because there's really, I mean, you got a frontage road out there in front of Gus Pesh and the credit union, but really there'd be no dodging the speed limit on the stretch we're talking.
No.
The other thing is too, you're right about Sioux Center, but I think the semi-traffic alone, it is wide open intersections, but whether they're sitting there at Dean's Dairy or sitting there on 18th by the oil place or sitting up by Lampert's there, those trucks block people. I don't know what's causing the accidents, but there's a lot of vision blockage that happens just because two people are sitting in them intersections at a time. One wanting to turn left and one, so.
Impatience.
One thing, and I catch myself doing this, when you're going south and you get to, before you even get to 24th Street, I get over in that middle lane because I'm gonna turn to get on the bypass. I don't stay on the outside lane, And I sit there and watched it this morning, and there's a lot of them doing it.
No, I did notice, just for purposes of discussion, we headed up north on 60 this last week, and there's some stretches that have three lane with a turn lane, but it has an acceleration lane too. So I don't know if we do end up changing something, possibly looking at that. Not that it has to be accelerated to 55, but even if it's 45 or something, that just gives a little extra width there, even for trucks to turn out into when they're making a right-hand turn or whatever the case may be. But I had never really noticed it before. I don't know if it's something that they've just gone to, or if I just hadn't paid attention prior to this, because I wasn't in that lane. I was in the driving lane, so.
Dave?
Coming from the guy who has to cut people out of the cars when they wreck, we need to slow them down. There's way, way more traffic from 12th Street on south than there ever was. It's 45 mile an hour at Godfather's, and it's 35 from Plymouth Street to Godfather's, and people who work along there, Kenny can attest to this, sometimes that's 50 miles an hour. So I would say slow them down all the way out. Maybe say through traffic, keeping the right-hand lane. Like the mayor said, everybody's always getting over because they're thinking they're going to get on that bypass to go south. Through traffic, stay to the right with signs, turning traffic, center lanes, that kind of thing. But we have a lot more traffic out there than 20 years ago when I lived here. I mean, you got to McDonald's, you were getting to the end of town. And that's why the speed, I think, was faster. And we had some pretty massive wrecks at McDonald's there, people pulling out. But I think with the heavy traffic and the South Ice Cream Plant and all those industries getting off work, you have a lot more traffic out on that end than we ever have before. And that speed, if it's 45, like Clark has said, they're running 55, 65 miles an hour by the time they get out there. I mean, when they get to Hardee's, they're putting their foot into it because they're getting out to the bypass. And we've seen that with a couple fatalities. The speed, if the speed would have been down, they might have been able to get around that vehicle that was turning. So I'd slow them down for sure.
Okay.
I agree with slowing them down, and I don't know if that will happen or not, because everybody wants to get from one point to the other as quick as they can. But I have noticed when I drive, and I'm over 70 now, so I pay more attention to things. So when I see the white arrows on the streets, and I see a turning lane, and I see an arrow going straight, I'll get in the arrow line that's going straight, because I don't want to run into somebody. And I think we could utilize arrows on the concrete would probably be one of the cheapest ways to go. And you've got, I really think people pay attention to it. In the case out by 18th and 24th, if you're in that outside lane, you really don't have a rear end problem all the way out until you get ready to turn off and go down the bypass if you stay in that lane. And I even think the arrow would help out there when you turn to go south on the bypass. People come over that bridge and they can't really tell where that turning lane is, but if you had 2 or 3 arrows painted prior to that, I think it would help that problem out there. But I think white arrows painted on the highway, it would be an inexpensive way to go. And then, of course, we can all argue about speed. I like to deliver out to the dairy, out to the corporate office, and my next delivery is Brentwood. And so, like everybody else, I want to get there as quick as I can. It's a bigger town than it used to be. But I do know that going by my place, there are cars 50 miles an hour daily buzzing through there. And God only knows what they're doing when they get out a little bit further. So speed is a problem.
On the bypass, we, a couple of years ago, had problems with people figuring out where to get off because the white lines were painted all the way through the exits. And we finally got the state to agree with Diamond buffing them off so the white lines went away for the exits. And I actually had a couple comments in the last 2 weeks that if that wouldn't have happened, they wouldn't have been able to see to get off when it was raining so hard on a, was it Saturday night or last Thursday night or something like that. So they were so thankful that they could actually see where the white line ended so they could figure out where to turn off, because if you're out there on the corporate one and you're trying to get off the bypass, you're not going to see if it's raining cats and dogs. So I think that's one thing we did. I think there's also so few people turning left into 18th and into 24th that there's very few people that assume anybody's going to turn. So they're just going. The other thing they're doing is they're checking their phone and making sure they've got their text messages going. And the road is so smooth. It's just like 4th. It's a smooth road like 4th is. And people go a lot faster than they're supposed to because it's a smooth road. I'm not saying buff up the road and make it a bad road.
That's where you were going.
No, but I'm not going to say that. I think that's one of those things that, having an officer every once in a while sit at 24th or whatever, not in the weeds, but out on the road, makes people actually pay attention. That seems kind of dumb, but we can knock it down to 45 from 55. I'm not sure it's going to make a difference in your average speed. We can try it, but it's not going to make a difference. I like Kenny's arguments about painting the arrows, because I think Delana's comment on 12th, you paint the arrows. For some reason, once after we get those painted, right about this time of the year, everybody pays attention. And then after they get worn off a little bit, then you go out there at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and it's a mess. You just look and think you got to go and almost close your eyes and then go through the intersection. And 6, we've got, Hy-Vee eventually coming to that corner. I don't know how we're going to deal with a 5-way with Hy-Vee, but I think we'll have to deal with that eventually. So for the 2 out ones, which are the 2 we're talking about, including 12th, if you want to add that in. 12th, we need to have those painted. We need to have that. We have that 5-year paint that we tried to put on them. It lasted a year and a half, but, well, it shows how much traffic we got out there, right? I mean, it does show. You need the arrows on between the tracks and the lights, and you need the arrows before the tracks and the lights. And I think that does work. I think you need the arrows at these other places the guys are talking about on 18th and 24th. But I think every once in a while you need to have an officer sit out there, not necessarily to write tickets, but to sit out there, because people do slow down when they see the guy. And I don't want a dummy car or something. I want a real car out there, because they're going pretty fast. Sometimes, even myself, when I'm leaving town, I don't think I'm going fast, and I'm looking down and I'm going 60. Because the road is smooth, I'm not hitting any bumps, I'm not seeing anybody. But there's plenty of room to see on both sides.
Let me ask this question. How many is in favor of painting in arrows or using the arrows on the pavement?
I think it's worth a shot.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm.
You're talking to keep people on Business 75.
Turning left.
Driving in the right-hand lane.
Right.
Yeah.
Where
To
they're
go-
supposed to.
Yeah.
And not driving in the left-hand lane.
I think it's
But it makes them aware that they can look in the other lane and see that they're turning arrow, so it makes it pretty obvious.
You know what, we can, I have no problem with trying arrows. Everybody who's taken the driver's test knows you're supposed to drive in the right-hand lane and pass in the left-hand lane.
They don't.
The fact that they choose not to is not something that we can change.
No, we can't, we said it
But
before.
I also go back to a few months ago, Stu issued a report where citations versus cautions or warnings, and that they issue a lot more warnings, so it's not like we're out shooting for, getting speeding tickets. They're doing a good job. I know that every time they set up their street radar,
Your speed is.
yeah, you start paying attention, and quite frankly, 2 weeks after that's been out there for a week or so, warning people, I'd start writing tickets and throw the warning book away. And so I'm for the arrows and
How many are for reducing the speed?
That would be a question of what you want to reduce it to.
40, 45, whatever you
We've told
think.
it, they,
Not as many.
7 of you said to do it.
Oh, you got it here.
Yeah.
it's on the survey.
Okay.
Unless your attitude has changed.
All I'm trying to do, Scott, is get a feel so we can come to an agreement and bring it back to the council next.
I wouldn't have an issue with going to 35 up through McDonald's where it switches to 45 now, or maybe like right after 12th Street, and then go to 45 out to the bypass. And then pretty much county roads take over when it switches to gravel.
I think that's a discussion that you need to have with Shipper and Stu and the police officers before you bring back that recommendation to us. But I think we can vote on the recommendation to paint the lines as a council.
Paint the arrows.
That's what,
Yeah.
I think let's keep doing steps if we need to, but I don't want to change speed limits until I'm hearing it from the people that got to enforce it.
Now, I do have a
I would
question.
hope that you don't make any changes today. As I put in the agenda, I would like some more time to think it through and bring back a sketch of the entire route so that what we do is consistent, number one.
Right.
And uniform. We found out for about 3 decades that have an inconsistency in the use of the slab, meaning the number of lanes, and whether they're turn lanes or no turn lanes, whether it's 4-lane or 3-lane, going through a town is more important than trying to fix a spot.
Right.
Because of many of the reasons why many of you cited already, so I won't repeat it. We found that to be true on Highway 3. And so the state agreed with us, and the reason we've got 3-lane all the way through now is because of that. And for some of your sake, we went from 2-lane to 4, to 3, to 4, to 3, to 4, to 2. In that order from east to west on Highway 3. And today we go from 2-lane in rural to 3-lane through the city, back to 2-lane in rural. So what DOT did, DOT gets either the credit or the blame, depending on how you're looking at this. DOT owned it all the way through town. I'm back on Business 75. Because it wasn't Business 75, it was 75. So they designed it as a 4-lane facility. So when they went to retrofit it so that it would link up with the bypass, they stayed with a 4-lane design all the way through. And I compliment them on that. At the time and now, they were consistent. If we're gonna have 4-lane, then it should be 4-lane all the way through. If you're gonna have 3-lane, then it should be 3-lane all the way through. So your decision here about a single accident at 24th Street scares me a little bit, because we should be making a global decision of Business 75. What do you want it to be? And Stu just stood there at the podium, and thank you for that. Sioux Center, which 75 going through Center is like we had going through Lamar's before the bypass. It's DOT control. That's a DOT, State of Iowa highway. Actually, it's a federal highway run by the state. Today, we have a federal highway run by the state from Highway 3 north, and they actually call that 404, by the way. Why, I don't know, I never figured that out. From Highway 3 south is 100% city. So you do have the authority to change it and to do whatever you see fit. We could turn it back to a 2-lane, we could go to a 3-lane, we could continue with the 4-lane. we could widen it and do more 5-lane sections. That's why I want a little bit more time to think it through. Somebody mentioned Hy-Vee coming, and that was supposed to come in 15, now it might be 16, but it is coming, which is gonna add additional traffic congestion to the 5-way intersection at Dairy Queen. I'm moderately concerned about that. I either think that we need a redesign of that intersection completely, or we need to eliminate one of the 5 legs. So I'm going to be the first to say it, therefore I suppose I'll be the first to be condemned for even proposing it. I think, as an engineer, a 5-legged intersection doesn't work for me. I haven't made a huge deal out of it, but that is wrong. That's, and the accidents, I don't know, I haven't really visited with Stu. I would guess that some of the 6 accidents is probably due to that. We can ask DOT to fund a TEAP study. TEAP, I believe it stands for Traffic Engineering Analysis Program. And all it is, it's real simple. DOT is willing to pay a traffic engineer for 100 hours, that's all you get, 100 hours to study a line segment. There is that ability for us to get a free study, but it takes some time.
Is that for the Hy-Vee, the Dairy Queen area, or are you talking for our
The entire lane.
painting new lines? What are you?
That could be, I'd have to check, Clark, but it could be for all of Business 75. Enforcement is critical, as Rex pointed out, I think. Enforcement is critical as far as the speed issue. We should not be redesigning this road if all our problem is a speed problem. That's another one that gets controversial, but now I have said it. That's an enforcement issue, and enforcement alone. If people are ramming into the back of other people because whether they're texting, drinking a coffee, not paying attention, dreaming about what they're going to do later that day, I don't know what their reason, but if they're ramming into the back of people for that purpose, that is not a reason to spend multi-million dollars to change the configuration of this road. Not in my opinion. That is pure and simple an enforcement issue.
I agree with what Scott said, but I do know since the Indians were here and invented arrows, I think that's something we can use and continue to do inexpensively, not
That was
invest
pretty
a lot of
cool.
money.
That was a good transition. Huh? Give him credit on that.
Holy cow.
I can't argue that.
I'd like to at least try it. I did have a question for you, and probably don't have the answer right now, but the permanent speed signs that you see on, a lot of them in Minnesota, and they have this cell deal working with the sunlight. Are those quite expensive? Is that something that would work in a permanent way to keep the speed, because it tells the person how fast he's driving as it comes up? And if you put a rent house on top with a lens in it, they'd really slow them down.
I think they're about $2,500.
That's what they cost.
Hamilton's got a couple of those, Hamilton Boulevard. The last thing that I'd interject here is, the one thing I really do want, I think Dave Shipper has a very good point, though, that when we're speeding up at Godfather's, we can do whatever we want. I think we do need to, and I'm not big on speed reduction, but from Godfather's to past 12th, I think that needs to be reviewed no matter what else happens. 3-lane, 4-lane, 6-lane, lights, no lights, arrows, no arrows. I think that speed in there really does need to come down. Past Bumgar's there,
That's tricky.
till you get past 12th. And then the other thing is, can we look at reducing semi-traffic on that 12th intersection and getting them out on 12th, 18th and 24th? I think they cause a lot of problems. Very necessary. I'm not trying to cut the truckers down, but I think therein lies a lot of that congestion on that intersection, semi-traffic. And if we could push them south, I don't know.
I think Mark, all you're doing is gonna relocate another problem.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean,
It's, you know, you got Dean's, you got so many industries right there that use semis. The benefit of using 12th Street with a semi is that you do have a controlled intersection.
lights.
You've got a traffic light. At 18th Street, you have a stop sign. At 24th, you have a stop sign. I would much rather see a semi use a controlled intersection and use that traffic light to get out on the highway, because when they pull out from 18th or 24th, the traffic's already coming at them at 55 miles an hour. And when people aren't paying attention, now they've got a big truck in front of them going 15, 20, trying to get up to speed.
That's a good point. That is a
So-
very good point.
So as far as strictly safety speaking, 12th Street works better,
Okay.
simply because everybody else has to stop and let them go by. The other intersections, people are trying to get around at
Probably
55,
a very
60.
good point.
Now, the
If
east-west.
we were successful on putting more and more truck traffic on 24th, that's a good idea for a number of reasons. It would probably then, at some point, maybe not initially, warrant a traffic, or a signalized intersection.
No,
And that would be good for many reasons as well. It would clearly identify that intersection. That intersection, if there's one criticism I do have of the geometry of the intersection, it's in a section of super elevation because of the curve.
And the curve, right.
And so, and 24th comes up to it, and the super elevation goes away from it. So a person sitting in less than a full-size truck, you really can't see the road from your advantage point. That's a little bit of a problem, I think.
You're right.
At 12th Street, east-west, we do have the capability for a turn light. We just don't use it, right? Isn't there the extra?
Say that again?
Okay, we've got, for the light, the red lights going east-west at 12th. Isn't there a turn capability for a turn signal? It's just not used? It seems like there's a bottom
Going east-west?
light. Yeah.
We use it north-south is what
We
you're
use it
saying, but we're
north-south,
not
but it
using
seems like we have that fourth light down there for east-west and it's not used.
I don't recall that.
Yeah,
But that would take us a
If you're
fourth
right, if you're
light.
going west, it doesn't.
but yeah, I think isn't there a fourth?
I
know we don't, if there is, it's not.
Oh, I know it's not being used, but I almost think it's on
Within the
there.
cabinet, though, I can say this, I don't think the light exists, but I think in the cabinet, and even the PLC logic is there, that we could make that work.
Right.
So with the retrofit of the fourth light times 2, I think we've got the computer capability at that location to make it work.
So when you say cabinet, that's why it looks like there's like a blank hole there.
There's a stainless steel cabinet that's mounted on one of
Okay.
the corners that actually controls that
Okay.
sequencing of light, yeah. And I think it's in there.
I don't,
we're already using it for north and south.
Right. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, well, yeah, good point, Dave.
'Cause we've got the
Since
turn.
it's north and south, I'm pretty comfortable that we could do it on all 4 legs of that intersection, yeah.
Well, I happened to be out there the night that the accident occurred on 24th Street, and needless to say, I did get an earful from an individual, and rightfully so, you know. And that's kind of what started this whole thing going, is, and in my own mind, if we can, I'm not saying go out and spend, $100,000 on this project. If we can buy $100 worth of paint and put $100 worth of signs out there and slow the speed limit down, it may resolve it. I don't know,
but by the same token, what Scott's saying is give them a few weeks to work something up
Oh,
before we
absolutely.
paint lines and then have to
I
grind
agree,
them off.
but that's the reason we're having the meeting today and come back next month,
Absolutely.
and let's make a final decision next month.
If we can get that 100 hours of DOT, advice, I think that's exactly right. That's the way you do it. Let's,
Well, that could delay any kind of improvement
Yeah.
until 2015.
I think that DOT advice would be well spent on 75 and 6th Avenue, because that's going to be a big issue where we really need facts, and
And
especially,
Hy-Vee won't be located until 16,
Yeah.
so that,
and definitely do it during school.
we'd have the
time.
time frame to do it then.
Yeah.
Okay.
One other thing, in the APWA, ASCA, CE, and a couple other engineering-related CEUs that I've gone to.
He's trying to use those acronyms now, they're drawn up.
I'm sorry, the American Society of Civil
Talk another language for a
Get her-
second.
Get her down here where old Dick can understand it.
Put it differently, in some of the seminars and workshops I have attended for engineering, I will say this, converting a multi-lane facility to a smaller number of lanes have historically, and this I'm talking across the nation, and the one party that was really using that a lot is Portland, Oregon. And the reason it was been Portland is they've taken the lead in the nation for adding bike lanes to existing facilities. And they have found that one of the added benefits of doing that is they've reduced the number of traffic lanes for vehicles, and it has had a net result of being a safer roadway, like Stu, I think, quoted there. And so it didn't have to do with actual posting of speed, it had to do with the way it was configured. So I will throw that out, because I've repeatedly heard that, I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, that if you would take a 4-lane and go to a 3-lane, creating the turn lanes, and really dropping 4 through lanes to 2, you would probably see, by the nature of the beast, lower speeds and a safer facility. But that's a fairly large decision to make, to go from 4 to 3. However, once done, it's probably not going to cost all that much in this particular case, because you have the pavement structure already there.
right.
Would the state let us do that on their section of 75 that goes from Plymouth north? Would they agree to a switch over?
It's always hard to speak for them, but in this case, I think I will, since they did give us their nod of approval to do Plymouth or Highway 3. I would say probably yes, at least from the bridge south.
Yeah, because again, you want to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point. If we did drop, if you decided, yes, we're going to drop from 4 lanes to 3 lanes all the way through town, that piece should be included, I think.
Up until it splits for the bridge.
For the medium,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
median. in
Up
there.
to the Floyd River.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, thanks a lot for your input into that. So, give us some kind of an idea. Okay, moving on, the action items, change of sidewalk regulations. It's been suggested to the city staff that the city of Lamar specifically address sidewalk liability in its code of ordinances. A review of similar Iowa communities showed that sidewalk liability is specifically addressed in their code of ordinances. Staff has been working on this and recommend that the liability section be added to the Lamar's Code of Ordinances. And I think there was an example there of what we want to add or what they want to add, so. Any questions?
The only question I was going to check on, I don't think it needs to be added to this except for possibly a reference. Isn't there another or section number, Jason, that we have that indicates, like, you know, when the city comes out and marks, you know, it can't have a greater gap or separation than whatever, 3/4 or 1 inch, and if a certain percentage of it is broken up, that's addressed in an ordinance as well.
That's all in 136.
Okay. So this would basically,
Would you be adding this to 136 then? Jason?
Yeah, this section would be 136.18.
Okay.
But right at the beginning of 136, in the definitions, it explains all that, vertical, horizontal,
All of the
the
breakage.
spalling,
Okay.
how many cracks, how deep the holes can be, it explains all that.
Because that, I mean, I just noticed this indicated ice and snow removal, lack of sidewalk maintenance, and so I just didn't know if that sidewalk maintenance needed to refer to the other ordinance or not, since it's within that same section.
Well, there is two sections, and I made copies of them. So, I mean, 135.11 talks about maintenance of parking or terrace, which in most cases, that sidewalk sits in that parking. It doesn't specifically address sidewalks, but it just, I mean, it mentions that it's maintain all property outside the lot and property lines and inside the curb lines upon public streets. So then it gives examples of, you know, the mowing, the trimming of trees that we just addressed, picking up litter. I mean, it doesn't specifically address sidewalks, but like I said, sidewalks do lay in that parking area. And then the 13604, which specifically addresses the responsibility for maintenance of sidewalks. I mean, so there is two sections in our code already
Right.
that talk about whose responsibility it is to maintain them, make sure they're repaired, in good shape, that type of stuff.
And common sense would say that this would imply that they have to follow any other ordinance that applies to that. Now, my question for Joe is, what happens when common sense doesn't apply?
Then you put this section,
Which is 9 times out of 10.
The purpose of this section is to spell out specifically whose liability it is.
Okay.
The attorney, and Doug Phillips,
I believe so, out of Sioux
I
City.
think that's who it was, suggested something like
Okay.
this.
And as
And
far,
and this covers it as far as you're concerned, because it's beholden upon the property owner to know what maintenance is and what 130,
It's just
Okay.
pushing responsibility from the city to
Yeah.
your truly.
yeah.
Knowing how the law works in funny ways, I know if you sign a sheet to let your child go on a daycare trip or something to the school, is sponsored, and you say, yes, I'm not going to hold them liable, are we still in that catch-22 where somebody will come back to the city and say, well, you haven't enforced the rules, or you haven't done this, or haven't done that? Will they still be looking for the deeper pockets to sue?
Well, what you're looking at there is whether or not the person that signed the release had authority to sign the release for somebody. You know, and the Supreme Court of Iowa is still all over the place with that, as far as saving programs and so on and so forth, although they have said that you can have a skate, a kind of skate park or whatever it is, and not be liable for that and everything. So what this does is it just spells out that the adjacent landowner is responsible for any damages caused by bad sidewalks. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, but for the gal that's 92 years old and living in her house and never changes their insurance, and how is she protected for liability? I mean, to know that she has to have that covered.
Well, I mean, her insurance agent has a certain duty to her to make sure, if she owns the house, to make sure that she has liability. I mean, that's.
Because it would be a change, so.
Right, but I mean, I think in most of your liability policies, you have sidewalk coverage anyway for negligence. And again, you have to be negligent. I mean, if somebody just trips on your sidewalk and it's a perfectly fine sidewalk, there's no, you know, that's when you have that much difference, or you got a broken piece out or whatever.
That's my only concern. I don't have a problem with it. I just have a concern that how we inform people so that they know all of a sudden that it is part of their liability.
But it should be already anyway.
Yeah. Well, because we've been responsible for maintenance, now we're just clarifying the liability issue. And that's why I was just wondering if one needed to reference the other for clarification purposes was all.
curiosity, if somebody's riding a bike down Fourth and they wreck, is the city liable for that? I'm just total curiosity question.
If I wreck, I'm gonna get
I
up
mean,
and hope nobody
where-
saw me.
Well, then how could the city possibly be liable for a sidewalk? If I'm riding my bike down Fourth and I smash, I don't know, my tire jumps up or something and I smash.
Well, again, it depends on what your negligence was. If you knew that there was a big gap in the sidewalk and you didn't put out cones or do anything to fix it, you certainly could have some liability. And that's what, that's what courts will determine. Who and how much, and percentage, if any.
I'm certainly not opposed to this, but I don't get why we even need it. I just don't get why we.
I think it just spells it out clear,
Clarification.
doesn't it? Clarification as to who is actually responsible for this.
You sit here for a couple more years, you'll know why we're doing it.
My next question is in a business zone in downtown area where the property, where the legal property ceases and you get to a corner, then we're liable for the corner part of that. Does the city still maintain ownership of that?
That's a good question. There is a break where the city has control over a certain part of that corner.
Like at Joe's Corner.
That was,
Yeah.
I think that's based on a policy decision, though. That isn't based on our ordinance. So
I just
It's a
was
valid
asking-
question because of that.
I was just asking, if we're gonna change it, let's be sure that we make it clear exactly where we're going and what all is included so that we don't get a gray area.
Or is that a question for Rob Dixon?
Now, he's got a corner property. so-
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't picking on his location, but I mean, is it a liability issue? I don't know.
Neil?
Well, just kind of a follow-up to Ken's comment, and just a point of clarification. I think I know the answer, but because this might be an opportunity for the chamber to encourage business owners to be a little bit more prudent in the wintertime about clearing their sidewalks, is it back of curb to building in the downtown area? Because I can see people considering the sidewalk to be that point between the decorative brick and their building. So it might seem minor, but I think that's where we have the slippage downtown, is when people get out and have to step over the snow and ice. And if building owners understand that they're responsible to the back of the curb and not just to the decorative brick, it might be a good point for us to get across to them. But I want to make sure I'm stating that correctly.
Yes, back of curb, that's what you read.
Well, and that's what it would be in residential areas where the sidewalk is right up to the street.
Okay.
There's not a lot of those, but there are some.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Okay, any other questions?
Motion approving recommended changes to chapter 136 sidewalk regulation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded.
Dick,
We're gonna,
I just want to make sure, I mean, we talked about, do you want me to spell out that corner liability? Like Scott said, it has been a policy of the city at corner lots where the two sidewalks, at the point that they meet, from there to the back of the curb, the city has always repaired them. We don't clear the snow, the general maintenance of the things, as far as clearing snow and making sure they're clean, but the replacement of those, the city has done. Do you want any of that spelled?
not in ordinances.
All right.
Okay.
That's how we put those ADA pads in.
Right.
I think we need to know what legally how it spells out before we jump into it. That's the point I was trying to make. I don't want to get in a rush on something and then realize we left gray areas or didn't cover those exact questions.
No, I
Well,
think-
for the maintenance that we have in 136 already addressed, does that use the words sidewalk adjacent? Or does it specifically address
It
corners?
just talks about from the lot line to the back of curb. I mean, so those intersections fall in that description.
Lot line to back of curb.
Yeah,
So it is spelled out then?
I believe it is.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna change the ordinance to explain what you're trying to explain, but, yeah, we still gotta put the ADAs in on the corners, because that's a federal mandate that we gotta do when we replace them. So we gotta have them done.
And we should control that, just to make sure that they're put in the right way
Right.
and they meet the regulations.
Yeah, because even some of the ones we put in 10 years ago, we're having to fix or redo some of them now because they
Correct.
weren't enough slope.
But as far as ongoing maintenance such as snow removal, et
Yeah.
cetera, then that's property owners. If there's an issue with the ADA ramp or something, then the city will come in and take care of it. But I don't think we want to muddy that water with trying to get
I think the
too
language is
nitpicky.
plenty.
Yeah. And if it becomes an issue, I mean, Joe's told us, anybody can sue anybody
Did
for
that-
anything at any
did
time.
that answer
so it
your
doesn't
question,
matter.
Jason? Okay.
So we need a
All right, there's a motion and second approving the recommended change to Chapter 136 sidewalk regulations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do
Opposed?
an aye for the first reading?
We're not doing that.
That's not the reading, that's the recommended change.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Now, you want to make a motion approving the first reading?
Motion approving the first reading of ordinance number
919.
It's actually 21.
921. We actually,
921.
921, we've already done 19 and 20 this year, see? Adding
I was just going
section.
by what's on this sheet.
I know, but sometimes, you know,
Clean that up.
adding section 13618, liability to Lamar's Code of Ordinances.
Is there a second? Motion been made and second approving the first reading of the ordinance number 921, adding section 136.18, liability to the Lamar's Code of Ordinances. Can we have a roll call on that, Bev?
Nelson,
Yes.
Goodchild.
Yes.
Knapp.
Yes.
Turkey.
Yes.
Motion carried. Okay, thank you. Okay, going on to E, the discussion. Clark, do you have anything?
Nothing this week.
How about you, Delana?
Yeah, Scott, I know that in the plans coming up, we've got Central Avenue, down for repairs, but I noticed yesterday, right over by the Art Center, when we stopped there, on both lanes, on Central, on the Art Center side, there's a real drop where that storm sewer grate is. Asphalt has kind of been built up around it. And like we were just talking with bikers and the like, I know generally try and avoid riding over those storm sewer grates anyhow because some bike tires are thinner than that, but I don't know if there's anything we can do as far as, painting around it or something just to call people's attention to it, because it is a fairly significant drop, which I'm sure will be addressed when we redo the street. So we probably don't want to put a lot of money into it now. But
You're speaking of the one that's on the Second Street side?
both northbound and southbound, but on the Art Center side. But both corners, because I was parked on southbound on Central there and walked back to, I just noticed it because I drove over it as I was pulling into the parking area.
Then I noticed the one on Second Street, right next to the expanded parking by the Art Center.
Right.
But that one, I think, we have talked to a contractor about repairing the top of that one.
Okay.
It's down about 2 inches.
Yeah, and that's the way the other side is too.
Oh, okay.
So maybe both of those could
I
be
think they've just
looked
gone.
at.
I think it's just happened.
Oh,
You think
did it?
so?
Yeah, because a couple other places down I noticed, I think, that
Okay.
passed on, that they just dropped, the one rain we had 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden, 2 places dropped about 2 inches.
Exit does, it looks like the asphalt just kind of.
Could be from the deep frost we had.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, if there wasn't enough base under there, and all of a sudden it just went down. So we just have to look at it, but,
Yeah,
yeah, I think painting it though, if we don't get it done by the time they're having this big display and stuff, painting it would be fine. It might even be good for this weekend, for the parade, to just at least draw a little paint circle around it, so people are noticing it, you know?
since it's right near where you cross the street, it's kind of nice to at least have your eye drawn to it so you don't all of a sudden step down into a hole.
Yeah, we'll look at those, all three of those then. East side, west side of Central, as well as the Second Street side. Make sure they're all okay. Okay.
Anything else, Delana?
No, the only other thing was, I assume it's going to happen, but I just wanted to mention it just in case. See if maybe Friday the street sweeper could run up and down Central real quick, because there's going to be debris and everything in the gutters. So just before the parade on Saturday, clean it up so the little kidlings getting their candy can get at it.
With the force of that water, a lot of the gutters are probably the cleanest I've seen them all.
Yeah, but now you've got everybody taking down the branches that broke, so then all that's going to be in.
Yep.
So that's it.
Is that it? Okay. Rex, do you have anything?
No, we're closed.
Say what?
We can't go home.
Well,
So we're just gonna stay here, you know,
we
but
ain't gonna stay here and run this council meeting, that's for sure.
Mahogany's closed.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
you can get there the other way.
Yeah, I know.
You can get over the new bridge.
Ken?
Through the gravel.
Question for Scott, have you made a decision on Business Highway 75 from 3 to 12th Street? Are we gonna just do sealed joints, or what are we gonna do before winter to seal that up again?
It was put on the pavement doctor's list to do the holes, and it's been put on the list for seal with Neil from Merrill
Okay,
to seal joints.
yeah. 'Cause I think we can get a few more years out of that cover if we do something. If we don't, it's gonna be tore up by next spring.
Yeah. Steve had talked to pavement doctor, I want to say already in early May.
Good.
So we're waiting for him to come. I just got done faxing the list, not faxing, texting the list to Teresa on joint sealing. So she's ready to start in Lamar's. So you'll see sealing of joints shortly here.
Good.
I don't know where she'll get started, but there's a fairly extensive list.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I got, Scott, and I can visit with Steve on this, but on the walking trail or the bicycle trail, out on the golf course, it's hole number, that red 4, there's a chunk that's broke out of that. And we probably should take a look at it, but I can get a hold of Steve and see what we can do, okay? Okay, Bill, you have anything?
The only thing I've got is we just finished the cleanup days and the amnesty days. We did have 333 people take advantage of the amnesty at the landfill. They took out about 65 tons of material. Recycletronics, we did about 5,000 pounds of recycled electronic goods. We had the appliance drop off. We had 75 people take advantage of that this time. So we are getting good attendance. We do continue to get things cleaned up and get rid of them. So
Is that 333 considerably less than last year?
it was 264 last year.
No, we did better. Good.
Yeah, good. Anything else, Bill?
No, that's it.
Okay, at this time, we will be closing our